Um, I know this is slightly unrelated to crypto, but let me just show silver. So I actually, damn, silver's already at $80. It's funny because if you look at what I was basically predicting, um, my main target for silver is $165. That's like the final target for silver for me. Before we get like a massive correction. This is essentially just based on um, a few things. So one of them is the fact that we've had this massive cup and handle structure where we've obviously broken the previous resistance for silver. So resistance for silver was $50, has been since 1980. So it's been previous resistance for quite a substantial number of years, like 45 years, which is crazy, right? Um, but obviously we've broken out of that. That was expected though, because literally this is like the most obvious cup and handle ever. I literally told everyone last year, um, I'm buying silver, or people should be buying silver at $35. This is your time to buy. Not financial advice, but this is kind of like a once in a lifetime thing, right? So I know a few people who did buy silver. Um, so congrats to those people. Uh, and yeah, I mean, we reached $120, right? So that's basically very close to a 4x in the space of like 6 months. So a lot of people made money, which is great. But yeah, I mean, we're obviously massively, massively oversold on the RSI. But as you can see previously, um, back in 1980, we could obviously go higher. And the idea is that we do obviously get pullback, but then possibly reach that target. Now, we might get a deeper pullback on silver, by the way. Um, so just to bear that in mind, as I said, like with um, the fibs are telling us that we should possibly be reaching $165. Um, also with cup and handles, what I basically did is I drew a trend line from the bottom of the cup to the top of the cup, and then you put the base of that line where you get this pullback here before we obviously broke out. And coincidentally, where that pullback was actually COVID, and it was right at the 78.6% fib retracement level, which is basically like your final target for a trend reversal. So this is just to show that you don't only have to do this with crypto. This obviously works with commodities, it works with stocks, Fibonacci, Fibonacci levels, Elliott wave, patterns like cup and handle pattern. They all essentially work on anything, essentially. But yeah, you can see that we literally, for quite a number of years, actually, I think it was for about 4 or 5 years, we are retesting this 786 level. You can see in COVID we actually broke below it, but we didn't have any monthly close below that 786, and then obviously from there you can see we climbed. So there is obviously always going to be the expectation that we do come back to retest the $50 region at some point, but obviously it's very, very difficult to predict when silver is going to get back down to $50. It could be quite quick. I mean, I doubt it because I'm still looking to get to $165. But if we're seeing this as the final wave up, then I would expect at the very least that we hold, let's see, that's like $40. So round about here. So we may even come back to retest the $50 region, but I think that would be quite deep if we wanted to get that final fifth wave up to the upside. So typical targets are the 38.2 and the 50% on silver, which, yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're there now. I mean, silver's tanking pretty hard though. This is quite an impulsive move down, but you can see on the 4 hour, silver is massively oversold. So there is a chance that we get some kind of buyback here. But you can see silver I mean, guys, we were literally like $120, and silver is literally $77 now. It's literally almost 50% drop. Um, so this is what I'm saying. Like people sold in this region. Like they knew to sell at this point. But as I said, I still think that silver has some juice left in it to possibly push higher to get to this final 165 level, and then we can see a much greater pullback. Anyway, so let me stop talking about silver and banging on about it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Okay. Would you long from this area? Maybe. It's not a terrible place to long because, it's literally like the 70%, sorry, the 50% fib level at $70 is kind of one of your targets. So if you wanted to like long from $70 and then slowly DCA all the way down to like 50, that's not a bad idea. Um, but yeah, I'd kind of wait for this at the moment because this is a very, very impulsive drop. Um, Even though we haven't like quite reached a target yet, which was $165, we can still see that this is quite a substantial drop, and I probably would just be holding back at the moment. Because silver and gold. I mean, if we look at gold, I think gold reached like 5,600 or whatever it was. It was crazy, right? Yeah, 5,600, and gold has dropped to 4,700. So literally in the space of like a few hours, we have essentially dropped 15%. Um, that's a pretty big drop. So I wouldn't be touching anything at the moment when it comes to gold and silver. Bitcoin, unfortunately, I mean, yeah, so this is kind of the main crux of it, right? I mean, I'm worried. I'll admit I'm quite worried at this point for Bitcoin. Um, Now I'm just gonna kind of clean this up a little bit just to I know this is my long-term chart, but I don't think we need to have so many things on here. Um, we'll keep that on. We'll keep that fib on. So this is obviously the weekly on Bitcoin. You can see weekly we go back all the way from, well, right at the start, right? Uh, COVID 2020. We have this pink diagonal line, trend line that I've had up for probably since I've started trading. Um, and you can see that we've had a few touch points on it, today being the most recent touch point. Now, I don't particularly, I'll probably get rid of this one as well. I don't particularly want to worry anyone, but I could tell you that if we break below this pink trend line and we have a weekly close below it, that for me is massively bearish, and I think that could possibly signal the start of the bear market. I have kind of warned for quite some time that we were very close to my initial target, which was 135K on Bitcoin. We got to 126K. So we were only a few $1,000s out from my bull market top target. Um, and, you know, there is a chance that we do obviously break this trend line, and there's a chance that we possibly come down to retest the previous highs, previous all-time highs around 69, 70K. That is a very real possibility at the moment. Obviously, stocks are. I'm not entirely sure how stocks are doing. I need to check. I know Tesla was obviously falling, and a few others were falling. Gold and silver, as you can see, very impulsive to the downside, and unfortunately, Bitcoin is kind of joining that club at the moment. Bitcoin has been going out for quite a number of days, really. I mean, we've not really seen much strength in Bitcoin. Um, if we could just draw a fib here and we can see that, to be honest, this was meant to be a B wave to the upside, just as a corrective pattern. So you have like A, B, C, where the C kind of should end ideally around the same length as the A wave or just below it. Okay. Um, but I mean, the B wave is a little bit worrying because I would have hoped the B wave would get to at least the 50% fib. I really wanted to see Bitcoin get at least 100K before we see this substantial drop, but we didn't. We only reached the 38.2, literally right on. We touched the 38.2 percent fib level at 97,800. And then obviously we had that strong rejection that you can see. And now we're testing this diagonal line. So yeah, I think at the moment it's a little bit dangerous. That's all I can say. I wouldn't be jumping into any new longs. Switching to USDT dominance, you know, I've talked about this. I've warned about this so many times. And I did try to tell people that, look, we have had this trend line, this downward trend line, since the middle of 2023. We broke out of it, but then obviously fell back in, so we deviated. But we have touched it multiple times. This line over here, this horizontal dark pink line, has been support, and has been acting as support, as well as this peach colored trend line here acting as support as well. And we broke out of this trend line here to the upside. And that obviously was very, very bearish for crypto. There is the previous highs here that we have, like local previous highs for USDT dominance. You know, one of the highs is July 2024. Then we retested that on the 24th of November when we had that also the large drop of crypto and alts, Bitcoin. But you know, you can quite clearly see on USDT dominance that unfortunately this was only a three-wave move. If we saw something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the downside, then we can maybe have got a bit optimistic because then we would expect a three-wave corrective move followed by further downside, and that would have been good for alts and Bitcoin, but that hasn't happened. In fact, what's happened is after a three-wave move, we're actually attacking that previous high on USDT dominance, right? We're attacking that previous high, that previous resistance. And, you know, we could possibly get a breakout and then deviate back below. But again, I think this is very, very dangerous. This is very, very, very dangerous. And I do not advise anyone at this point to take new longs. If you're in longs, then we stay in the longs, but definitely not take new longs because this is just not the trend for USDT dominance is up. The trend for Bitcoin is down. It will be suicide to just long and hope for the best at this point. You know, we all want to time the bottom, but there is no indication, this is the slightly worrying thing, there is no indication that I am seeing that we have bottomed on Bitcoin and Ethereum and alts. That is my my honest take at the moment. So I'm just switching to Ethereum because I know I've had this chart and this position set up for a while. We can also see the volume profile here as well. So, you know, for Ethereum, we saw that there's a lot of volume around the $3,200 to $3,000 region. You can see that we had an A wave down, B wave up to that $3,200 region. And to be honest, it looks like we're expecting a C wave down. Now, I said this before, we need to look at the areas of interest where there is high volume. There is high volume sitting around the $2,500 region, and then obviously below that, I mean, we're kind of in no man's land. So um, if I just yeah, so I'm just going to quickly add the golden pocket 61.8 fib just to show that we were holding that level. We were holding that level. We were retesting that level for weeks, a couple of months. Um, but now we've obviously broken below it. Now, if we get a weekly close, below that $2,760 area for Ethereum, there is a good chance that we are going to see um, the next important fib. I would say the 70.7% fib is of some importance, and also that obviously coincides with the volumetrics that we have here. And obviously you can see we've got a lot of candles around this area of consolidation. But worst case scenario, we obviously drop to the 786, which is located around $2,160. So that's obviously kind of concerning at the moment. That there is a very high likelihood that we are going to go lower at this point. And as I said, I don't think anyone should be, frankly, reckless enough to try and long this at the moment, because there is no indicators that suggest that we have bottomed. It genuinely looks like Ethereum is going to try to find support here. So around about the $2,400, $2,500 region. So I still think we've got, at least for Ethereum, I still think we've got at least another like 7%, 6% drop. And then obviously what that means for, altcoins, like for instance, Link, I've been keeping an eye on it. We hit $10.50 dollars. I have an entry set up at 10.42, so you can see we just missed that. But I have no doubt that we'll fill it, to be honest. I'm almost optimistic that we will fill that. Not that I want it to be filled, but I mean, it's a good setup. I think it'll be pretty good if we fill it. And then obviously we've got, FYI, this is for spot positioning only, by the way. We have another entry at around $8.8, which I know is quite a lot further from where we are at the moment. But in all honesty, that would fill this fair value gap that we have. I mean, you can argue we did fill it with that wick that we had on the 10th of October. But depending on the exchange you go on, that wick doesn't come down as far. So there is still a possibility that, we could come down a lot further. Similar thing with this wick that we had here as well. It's very exchange specific, but there is a possibility that we could come down even lower to retest the $8-9 region. I wouldn't be surprised. So just as a reference, I see this whole area here as support, and let's just label it as such. So we know that this is essentially a buy zone. This is where we should start seeing some form of demand from the market. Obviously, if we look at the volume profile, we can see that, it's actually a little bit thin up until, $7.3, which is quite a substantial drop. I wouldn't want to see Link drop that much. I mean, if we take a fib from the lows to the highs, yeah, I mean, we're basically at the 786 fib at the moment. And failing that, we have the 0.886 fib, which I'll throw on here just for visualization. And yeah, I mean, that's taken us down to 7.8, essentially $8, which is basically where that wick got to on the Binance chart. So, I mean, again, it's not really a buy zone, but I think these whole areas here from where I've got my first entry all the way down to like $8. Um, I think this is a buy zone for Link. I think people are gonna start getting interested at these price levels. If and this is very, very important by the way, if we break below that previous wick at around $7.8 and we sustain below that region, I cannot see why we are just gonna go and make new lows. And I don't want to be super bearish, but I'll tell you what, if it loses that level, we're gonna see something like that. We're gonna see something like this. We're gonna see Link go to $1 or $2. Well, maybe not $1, but $2, $2, $3. Um, and I don't want to say it because you know, if we look at this this structure, I genuinely was hoping that Link would be able to hold $13 because I really wanted to see, this triangle breakout, something like that. It hasn't. We essentially had a monthly candle closure below this monthly trend line that we've been holding since, well, what's that, 6 years ago, and we've broken below it. That to me is not a good sign at all. So I think there's a lot of people exiting the market at the moment. The bounces are very weak. We can see that probably on any chart that we look at, like H bar. H bar surprisingly seems to be holding up well to some degree. But you can see we have this move, and I'm hoping that we maybe bottom here for H bar, right? I'm hoping that we find support if we end up going this low. And if I kind of just clean this up a bit, I might actually just remove this. A few other additional trend lines that we probably don't really need right now. Yeah, so I mean, you can see fib-wise, I took a fib from the high to the low to the high here. Now, the 786 takes us to around $0.088. And if I took a fib from the low here to the high, the 88.6, which is very deep, takes us around the same area, which is why I've got a setup here that I'm just eyeing at the moment. So I still think we go lower. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think we're going to go lower. I think we're going to go at least another maybe 5 to 10%. And maybe at that point we can say, okay, this correction is over. And that might be the same for Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin, as I said, I really don't want to see it lose this diagonal line that we have, that we've been holding for quite a number of years. I wouldn't want to see it lose that. But as I said last time, this looks very much like possibly head and shoulders pattern, where we head down into a bear market and, see possibly 50K first, and then bear market target would be 32K, 33K, something like that, I do see it happening. But I only see it happening if we break this trend line, and if we break this trend line and close the monthly candle below this trend line. So, it's not going to be the end of the world if we break this trend line on the daily or weekly and, we retest like 77K, um, maybe even 73K. Don't really want to see it go a lot lower than that. But if we retest this area here and our monthly candle closes above it, then there is still a chance that we can grind higher and try to get that final push to the upside. Let me just check the chat so I don't just talk and not see what people are saying. Big double top. I have a Bitcoin long open around 80.5K. Do I close it? Uh, I mean, it depends how much you've risked, to be honest. Um, we are obviously at quite an important impasse where we have tested that trend line that I mentioned. So at the very least, I know people are expecting we go to 70 to 75, 76K, but at the very least, I'm expecting a bounce from this trend line because this is a multi-year trend line. Okay, this isn't just some kind of 15-minute candle trend line. This is a multi-year trend line. So I think if I had a long at 80.5K, I think it depends where you had that long from. Like, where were you longing it from? Were you longing it from here, 21st November? Okay, today. Right, I see what you mean. So you basically bought it like here in the early morning. So you have a limit set. So, but that limit has been filled, is what you're saying, right? You're in the trade, is what you're saying, or you've set a limit and you're asking if you should cancel it or not. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Um, it's dangerous, is what I would say. It also depends on your setup. What's your stop loss? Do you have a DCA? How much are you risking? That's kind of the question, right? Um, because if your stop loss is sensible, right? And when I say sensible, I mean your stop loss is here, basically just below that previous low here at around 74,500. If you set up something like this, I'll tell you how I would set this up. Maybe I should just tell you how I would set this up. So I would have my stop loss round about here, 73. Just set the target to, whatever, let's be optimistic. Um, you can have an entry at 80,500, let's say. We got previous lows, but we've already tested that. So yeah, I mean, there's not much at 80,500 to be perfectly honest. But let's just go with it. Let's go with it. So you can set an entry here, and then your DCA could literally be I'd say probably around here, maybe possibly a bit lower. Just kind of like past 50% of that previous wick. So maybe at like 75,600. Let me remove that. So then we have, I can remove this fib as well, just to make it clearer. So then you've essentially got your entry here, your DCA here, and your stop loss here. And you would have like a 30% entry at your 80,500 level and a 70% DCA entry at 77,500. So that'll probably bring your average up to around about $78,000, something like that. Um, and then you've got your stop loss here, which would be at 73,000, and that could be like a daily stop loss if you want to play it like that. Um, Sorry, let me just see what Sharky's saying. He's following this. So what's... Oh, okay, Neil's posted something. Yeah, so I mean Neil's he's got a little bit tighter stop loss. Nothing wrong with that. You got your long. Okay. See, I'd probably play this a little bit more flexibly. Um, I think Neil's keeping it quite tight. I'd probably just give it a bit more room. Um, I'll address that question in a minute, Sharky. 1 second. Yeah, so I would probably just give it more room. Personally, this is this is how I would set it up. You know, Neil's setup is perfectly fine. If you want to keep it tight, absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with his setup. Me, I'd want to just give BTC a little bit more breathing space, just because of um, you know, we can get a few wicks down here. But then again, I didn't see what his stop loss is. Like, I don't know if he's doing like a 4 hour stop loss or a daily stop loss or just a hard stop. If it's a hard stop, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably keep it as a soft stop. But yeah, I think generally, you know, stick with what he's saying. I mean, this would be kind of my setup if that helps as well. Um, Maybe you can even do kind of like a mixture between his and my setup. It's up to you. But just give space for BTC. Just give space for it all the way down to around 75K. Basically that previous low that we had. Um, yeah, I mean, I always say if you feel uncomfortable with a setup that you have, just cancel it. It's not worth it. Trust me, we get a lot of setups in crypto. They come and go, you know, every few days, even if you have to wait a week, they will come. So, you know, don't worry about it for now. If you feel better to cancel it, then cancel it and we just see how it goes, right? Because at the moment we're kind of trying to catch a falling knife. We can't, as I said earlier, we can't specifically say when we've found a bottom yet. So just be careful of that. Let me just quickly address Sharky's comment. If USDT dominance touches 9%, what will the BT price be? What will the BTC price be? So where are we at? You mean if it reaches that 9.462%, where will it be? Not in a good place. It's probably the answer. Um, I mean, you know, I don't particularly like predicting price, but if I was to make a prediction where I think BTC will be, if we see such a push, um, I think personally, well, I mean, let's kind of find out maybe. Let's clean this. Well, I mean, that's kind of your answer, really. That's 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 where BTC would be, realistically. So I'll tell you this: if we look at this as an ABC, where the C wave doesn't truncate and finish around the same area as the A, and we get an extended C wave, where that extended C wave would be essentially a 5 wave move to the downside, something like that. If we see that, then yeah, that's where USDT dominance would be. USDT dominance at 9.4%, whatever it was, we would see Bitcoin get to around $53,000. And that lines up with your previous lows here on the weekly. So That I think would be like the worst case scenario. But it's a good time to buy. I mean, any buying in this major support I've just shown here, in my opinion, is a good time to buy Bitcoin. Maybe even lower, to be fair. As I said, I would probably just lower it a little bit more to around the 32K zone. Um, but this entire area would be a buy zone for Bitcoin. But, you know, this level is going to be very important to watch. And you can see Bitcoin is trying to hold that trend line at the moment. There's a lot of fighting. This is a critical area. This is a critical area that Bitcoin is testing that it hasn't tested since January 2023. So it's been 3 years since it's tested this area on this trend line. We've previously tested it in March last year when we had that BTC long that I'll always remember that missed by like $400 and then obviously went all the way up to $126,000. But we're retesting that area. And yeah, as I said, we have to hold it. Bulls have to come in at this point. Um, BTC does look shortable, but it was shortable. It was shortable at your B wave fib levels here. BTC shorting opportunity was at 97 to $97,500. BTC shorting it right now is dangerous. You would only short, as I said, if you get a break below this trend line and you get like a weekly close below it. Then yeah, you could enter a short if you feel like it. But I wouldn't be shorting support because you'd technically be shorting support because we're at support. Um, $7 soon. $7 what? Bitcoin? I hope that's not what you mean, Sharky. We had $3,000 Bitcoin at COVID. Yeah, $7. I don't know, man. I mean, we had a $9 Solana during the bear market, and everyone faded that, and Solana went to $300. But I think $7 for Bitcoin is quite low. I think that'll only happen if Michael Saylor sells and all of the countries decide that Bitcoin is trash and they just get rid of their crypto reserves. Then, yeah, maybe you'd be looking at $7 Bitcoin, which basically is zero, right? um, yeah. So yeah, I mean that's probably all I've got to say at the moment. Definitely would not be trading anything at the moment. Oh, Pengu. Yeah, so fun fact, I'm still in it because I'm crazy like that. Um, because I want to be in it, but that's just because I'm probably insane to stay in this trade. Um, but I am just banking on the fact that we are literally at the 88.6% fib level and they are previous lows. There's a lot of demand here. And I mean, look, to be honest, at the very least, if we even get a bounce back to our original entry, we can just get the hell out of it. But I am just waiting. We just have to wait and see what Bitcoin does. I think what Bitcoin does is going to be highly dependent on how I played the rest of this trade out, to be honest. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, no trade zone at the moment. Absolutely no trade zone. Don't think about trading anything at the moment. Um, I know there's a lot of people sometimes that, they have to open a trade. Like once a trade closes, they have to open one. Even if it's just ridiculous, it doesn't make any sense. They just have to open it for the sake of doing so, which is kind of borderline gambling. So always think of risk management, capital preservation. This is a no trade zone. I'm not even opening new trades. And we are now at the weekend, which, as I always say, is notorious for either crazy volatility or just consolidation. So, yeah, no trading from me. We'll just keep an eye on the market. And yeah, I'll obviously keep everyone updated if I see anything alarming or positive, and then we could possibly look at um, new longs or shorts, depending on the outcome um, in the new trading week. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it really. Um, if anyone has any questions, obviously you can just give me a shout in the chat. Um, yeah, I mean, you got liquidated for gambling. Honestly, I get you're still in profit, but really just be careful. Um, and I think during this time, I wouldn't even be leveraging. I wouldn't be touching leverage. I saw on Twitter news that I don't know how many billions got liquidated. You don't get liquidated if you're in spot. Could go to zero. Well, I mean, maybe not zero. Could go to 0.1 and you won't get liquidated. So just be careful. You want to preserve your money through this period because if good things happen and things turn around, this might be one of the best buying opportunities in the past year or two. So hold on to your capital at the moment. Try to not get liquidated. And if you really want to gamble, then maybe gamble with like 1 or 2 cents. Um, so you only lose 1 or 2 cents, and not add like 4 zeros on the end of that, or 5 zeros. Or go to Vegas. Yeah, exactly, Sharky. Go to Las Vegas. Um, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not advising anyone to do that, but yeah, just play it safe. Anyway, I'm gonna bail. Um, Small pump in the market. Yeah, there would be there would be. It's expected, right? As I said, we're at that trend line, literally at that trend line. So yeah. Shocking. Crap me up. I see you on a weekend, right? Anyway, I'm gonna bail. I've had a little sleep, so hopefully that was helpful. Really appreciate you guys joining. And just stay safe and peace out. See you guys later.